The story begins with a carriage passing through the middle of the forest. Inside the carriage, two young ladies are conversing when one says that this time Alice cannot make a scene, to which she retorts that it was because last time the dessert was so delicious that she couldn't hold back. That was Alice Wenger. And how was she to know that a few cups of punch would make her cheerful? However, Alice comments that this time she is sure it will be much better because her sister is going along. Her sister agrees but says that she still has to behave. This was Chloe Verger. Chloe explains that this ball is important because it is being hosted by Duke Tissy, and there she should find a potential fiancé to marry in the future. Nervous, Alice comments that she knows she has to find a fiancé precisely because he will save the family from sinking into debt. Even so, she has always dreamed of finding someone who makes her feel butterflies in her stomach. Tightening her cane, Chloe apologizes because if her leg weren't like that, which makes her think that if she could, she wouldn't place all this weight of responsibility on her younger sister. Alice suddenly stands up and sits next to her sister, comforting her, saying that she is not to blame and doesn't need to feel that way if there is someone they can blame. It's their father who loved their mother so much that he ended up spending all their money on medical bills and then completely failed to manage the estate. Alice also comments that if she thinks about what happened 3 years ago, even with their precarious financial situation, their father ended up allowing Duke Tissy's army to use the castle. He may be their father, but Alice cannot understand if he has a very good heart, or if he is just an idiot. The sister further comments that the rumors about Duke Tissy are not good at all. A new duke who led his soldiers to a great victory. She simply doesn't believe it. In fact, the rumors are that he has several illegitimate children with other women, and as soon as they are born, he executes them all in secret, besides saying that he has a terrible temper. If you happen to annoy him, he will simply ruin you, regardless of your title. Many say it would have been better if he had stayed on the battlefield. However, Chloe interrupts her, saying that considering their family's situation, they were very lucky to have been invited to this event. Even so, Alice worries that he is the kind of guy who wouldn't be good for them to have any relationship with, since there are all these rumors and they simply don't know what his situation is. That's why she secretly hopes that the two of them don't run into him while enjoying the party. As Alice continues talking about the Duke, Chloe seems a bit down as she bites her lip. Internally, she is encouraging herself not to be afraid of attending a social event because of her disability. 3 years earlier, in the state of Verder, Viscount Verder was the lord of a small castle, and with a smile on his face, opened the gates for the Imperial army returning from a battle. As Chloe passed by the soldiers, they commented that it was indeed true that the Viscount's eldest daughter was lame, and they even questioned whether she would be able to help anyone in that state. She would probably just be a hindrance. Even so, Chloe ignored it and continued helping those who were injured. There were even some soldiers making disgusting comments, saying that he had nothing to complain about since at least she was a good sight for sore eyes, since her face was decent at least. Later, in one of the chambers, a servant informed Chloe that her father had asked her to leave the injured in the care of the servants, which she agrees to. Even agreeing, she sits on her bed a bit upset, questioning whether she did something that might have hindered or even worried her father. However, having a good heart, she still believed that the pain and what they witnessed during the war was leaving the soldiers on edge. While looking out the window, Chloe thought that she always believed that the duty of the nobles was precisely to help the unfortunate and the sick. Someone shouting attention outside catches her attention. A man approaches. As everyone salutes, they greet the commander. The commander then says that earlier that day, he received news that her father, Wilhelm von Tisse, had passed away. While the soldiers mourned the news, the commander further added that her father had been decapitated by the enemy, and his head was displayed on the castle walls. Seeing the sadness of the soldiers, the commander asks if they would like to leave. Realizing the soldier's hesitation, he then says it seems that soldier does not want to leave, which he, shocked, tries to say that he does want to. The soldier explains that recently his wife gave birth to their child without him by her side, and therefore, he desires nothing more than to be with both of them. The commander then questions another soldier nearby, who shares that he is worried about his mother, as when he left, she was sick and alone at home. Other soldiers comment that they need to work to support their families, that their fiancé is waiting for them, and Chloe, listening to all this, can perceive the anguish in each of those soldiers' voices. Thus, the commander concludes that hearing all this, he has countless reasons for them to end this war as soon as possible and return home. And this also applies to him, as he has still not been able to recover his father's body, and even less, prepare a funeral for him. However, the commander remembers that it is not only by the will of God that a war is won or lost, which is precisely why he refuses to retreat. He is determined to do whatever it takes to lead the soldiers to victory. After all, this is now a problem that involves the pride and dignity of House Tissy. This was Taman Ernst von Tissy, the commander and now heir of House Tissy. Chloe, watching everything from the window, is impressed by the way he leads and inspires the soldiers. Everyone cheers as he says it depends on the soldiers to transform all this despair and longing into action. Chloe's little heart races at the thought that he is a much more incredible man than she imagined. However, little did she know that while everyone celebrated and she peeked from her room, she could easily be seen by the commander down below. Startled by suddenly encountering his gaze, she quickly crouches down while holding her breath, afraid he might have noticed her and also embarrassed by the situation. Even so, curiosity gets the better of her, and she takes another look to see if she was imagining things. But Damian was already leaving at that moment. She feels relieved that she may not have been seen, and she is still impressed, as she herself would never be able to act that way right after receiving the news of her own father's passing. So Chloe joins her hands and prays to God to guide the soldiers home safely, so that they can look after their loved ones. While the protagonist is crouched down praying, Damian takes a second look at that window where he believes he saw a woman. Chloe continues praying, asking for their suffering to bear fruit in battle. The next morning, Chloe peeks through the door to check if anyone has woken up so she can sneak out, thus giving herself enough time to return before anyone notices. But she is surprised by someone calling in the hallway. When she turns around, it is Gilles, the family servant. His cane slips, and Chloe loses her balance without the support. But Gilles catches her before she can fall to the ground. Relieved, she thanks him for the help. Gilles, embarrassed, quickly changes the subject, asking where the young lady would be going at that hour. Chloe explains that she is going to gather some herbs in the forest. Gilles offers to go fetch the herbs, but the young lady says he does not know the herbs to collect the right ones. Therefore, she prefers to go herself. The poor man still tries to explain that it is very cold and her father would not want her to be wandering around alone. But before he finishes speaking, Chloe interrupts him, saying that he has no reason to worry since she has done this many times. Realizing he would not be able to convince her, he simply asks the young lady to be careful. As he leaves, Chloe is impressed by how much Gilles has grown since they met. He was just a boy who didn't even reach her shoulder. The sun was rising as the protagonist gathered the herbs and thought that everyone was working hard, so she also needed to do what she could to help. She hears a noise coming from near the lake. When she looks, there is the commander standing, looking at the almost frozen lake. Chloe wonders what Duke Tis would be doing there, especially since she is the only one who knows this place. Still, she decides to leave without disturbing him. However, as she walks with her cane, she accidentally steps on a dry leaf, which makes Damian ask who is there. Nervous, Chloe drops the herbs on the ground, and again he asks who she is and why she is not saying anything. As he approaches, Chloe simply apologizes, introducing herself as Chloe Verdier, the eldest daughter of the Viscount of Verdier. The commander approaches and says he has noticed a pattern. Since last night, noticing that the Viscount's eldest daughter has a habit of spying on others like a rat. Realizing that the Lord was offended, Chloe apologizes and says that this time she really wasn't spying. He then questions whether that means she was spying yesterday, and even asks if her father asked her to seduce him. Before the poor girl can respond, he continues saying that it seems Lord Verdier is not as innocent as he appears, and has an ambitious side. Irritated by the insinuation, Chloe just lowers her head and says that is not the case. Damian, mocking, questions if that is not the case, then why would she appear tending to the injured and mutilated? The Verdier house may be of low standing, but this type of service is not meant for a noblewoman. Especially, he looks at Chloe's leg and cane. Someone in her condition. The protagonist is shocked. Is this the same guy she saw and was impressed by yesterday? That was really very disrespectful. She then responds that she was just trying to help those who volunteered to go to war to protect their families, so she didn't expect her title to be a problem. Her late mother taught her two daughters that the Verdier family may be humble in rank, but as nobles, they have a duty to help those in need. Ironically, the commander finds it incredible that she uses the phrase behavior of a noble, and to further show that he is indeed rude. He says she never thought that doing something outside her abilities is just selfish and ends up being a burden to others. Not satisfied, he also says that if she had listened to the disgusting comments the men made while she walked back and forth, perhaps she wouldn't be able to continue with her head held high and talking about noble behavior. He further questions what the Viscount would do if he had heard. If it were him, he would certainly rip the heads off everyone who dared to tarnish his daughter's name. Moreover, most soldiers ended up witnessing several of their comrades being torn apart in battle. By any chance, would Chloe know what that does to a man? Even now that the sun hasn't fully risen, she is alone walking in the forest with that leg of hers. And if something happened to her, who would be to blame? The protagonist, after hearing so much, steps back and says that this place has been part of the Verdier estate since before she was born. So that's why no one can enter this area without permission. Precisely for that reason, it is safe. The commander questions the word safe, which she expressly says yes, it is totally safe. He then grips his cane and asks if she would continue talking this nonsense if he did something like this. Quickly, he pulls the cane, causing Chloe to lose her balance, and she ends up leaning on him. Using the cane, he kills a snake nearby and says there are always hidden dangers in a forest, and she was very irresponsible for thinking otherwise. Returning the cane, he states that it is a bit damaged, but still usable to return to the castle. But Chloe refuses and thanks him for the, so to speak, help. Damian scoffs, laughing, saying that apparently she has quite a temper. Bringing his hand closer to her legs, he asks to examine her, asking if by any chance it is hereditary. Chloe tries to pull away, asking why he is doing this and why he is being so rude to her. At that moment, he stops and they look at each other for a moment. Giving up on provoking her further, Damian stands up, saying that she is very sensitive, that he was just asking something, and she already interpreted that as an attack. Letting emotions prevail will only lead to defeat, he advises her. Chloe then responds that she is not a soldier and therefore does not fight in wars to have a defeat or a victory. Looking at the snake's body, he says that life is a war, especially for someone like her. Irritated, Chloe says that this may even be true, but it does not give him the right to meddle in her life. Obviously, he responds that he just wanted to give advice. And the fact that she refuses to thank him says that he probably hit a weak point. Chloe does not respond, but now she is sure that he is like a demon, and that everything she thought of him yesterday couldn't be more wrong. Holding her dress, she says that with all due respect, she has only 2 things to say to him, which he asks her to go ahead and say. The protagonist says that first, for the cane he damaged, she would like a new one. Quickly, he responds that he will ask the woodworker as soon as he returns to the tents. However, Chloe refuses, saying that she wants a cane made from the birch trees that grow in the Tees territory, which makes Damian find it a bit suspicious. Chloe adds that she remembers he said yesterday that they would return victorious from this war. Therefore, as soon as he returns to his territory and everything is over, she would like him to ask for a new cane to be made. But before she can finish her sentence, he pulls her face close, asking what she would do if he gave her something much better, saying that her father seems to want something more. Annoyed, she pushes his hand away and says that he is missing the second point. If by any chance her father praised his daughters in front of the Duke, you can be sure it was precisely out of paternal love. And even though he adores his 2 daughters, he is not so clueless as to forget that the House of Verdier is far below in rank from the House of Tisse. Therefore, you can be sure that the commander is not the only one who does not want to get involved with a disabled woman, and she knows that this applies to all men. Oh, poor thing, the girl's self-esteem is on the floor. The commander responds for her to save her laments for her diary, but Chloe cuts him off, saying that they are not laments but facts. Limping, she starts to return to the palace. And before leaving, she says she would like to make it clear that even though he is free to feel pity for her, he does not have the right to assume that she is unhappy or that her life is a war. Damian asks if that means she is happy living this way, which makes Chloe stop for a moment. The audacious one even adds that her life will never change. Look, I can't wait for him to fall for her and regret being so mean at the beginning. Obviously, the protagonist doesn't let it slide, and says that she is indeed very happy living a peaceful and unchanging life in the land where she was born, until the end of her days, and that for her is indeed happiness. Sometime later, Chloe is lying down. In fact, she doesn't know exactly how she managed to return home, but that cold morning wind ended up wrapping her like the forest snake. Gilles is by her side, hoping that the young lady will recover from the fever soon, and informs her that Duke Tisse and his men have already left. Smiling, Chloe thanks Gilles for keeping her informed. After that, it took a long time for her to return to that forest. Back to the present, 3 years later, Chloe and Alice are entering the ball. The rose castle of the House of Tisse was incredible, so everyone wondered how it was possible to be used only once a year, and only for parties. Alice comments that it is ridiculously extravagant, and Chloe reprimands her for her language. And while leaning against the armchair, she says that she is totally exhausted. However, someone calls her name, which surprises both of them. Alice comments that it is a pleasure to see Mr. Cormier again. He then asks her for a dance, which she accepts with a smile. Before they go, Alice introduces her sister Chloe. Chloe, even without getting up, introduces herself to the Lord, and he says it is a pleasure to meet Alice's sister. The Lord comments that it might be a pleasure to dance with her later, but before he finishes the sentence, he looks at Chloe's cane, realizing that she has a mobility issue. And somewhat awkwardly, he doesn't quite know what to say after noticing her situation. Chloe, trying to lighten the mood a bit, laughs, saying that the sight of all the beautiful people dancing is already joyful enough. Even so, she thanks him for the invitation. The music continues, and Alice dances with the Lord in the middle of the hall. Chloe feels happy thinking that probably everyone has forgotten the scene Alice made at the last ball. Moreover, Count Cormier seems to be a great match for her, precisely because Chloe has not heard any bad rumors about the Count until today. She is happy with this situation because perhaps things will improve for the family, and Alice will end up with someone good. Pressing her cane, she wonders if she should go thank the Duke for the invitation. Even so, hesitating, she thinks it would be better to just avoid him if possible. But that might be a bit rude since he is the one who invited them. At that moment, Chloe even questions what the Duke's reason could be for inviting them to this banquet. Could it be because her father helped them 3 years ago? However, when remembering those days, Chloe does not have good memories of the things he said, calling her the nuisance, which makes her even more discouraged to greet him since he did not seem like a person who appreciated kindness. Still gripping her cane, the only thing the protagonist wishes at this moment is that he completely forgets about her in those days 3 years ago. Everyone at the banquet starts to whisper, and someone begins to descend the stairs, until Chloe hears the guests commenting that the Duke has arrived. He descends the stairs with his sword drawn and stops right in front of Chloe. Realizing that there was no way to ignore him, especially since he was literally standing in front of her, Chloe stands up and greets the Duke, avoiding, of course, to make eye contact with him so that this is as brief as possible. However, to Chloe's dismay, his response was that it had been a while since they last saw each other, and he calls her by her name, from the House of Verdier. Everyone at the ball begins to pay attention to their conversation, where the Duke says he is totally indebted to Chloe's father for the assistance he provided 3 years ago, and for that reason, he would very much like to thank him in person. However, he has been very busy lately. Also thanking Chloe for accepting the invitation, to which the poor girl simply responds that it is an honor to be in that place. The Duke notices something in Chloe's hand, which is her cane, and probably remembers that promise they made 3 years ago. However, instead of being a nice guy and just doing something good, obviously not, right? He extends his hand asking if Chloe would like to dance with him, which shocks the poor girl because everyone who notices that she has a difficulty ends up avoiding asking her to dance precisely because it will be very difficult for her. All the nobles start commenting if the Duke happened to notice her cane, and even that maybe she did something for the House of Thissy since the Duke is doing this with her in front of everyone. Chloe, obviously, with all her class, declines the invitation, saying that she might not be a skilled person to dance with him. The clueless one asks if she is refusing because many men have asked her to dance and he is at the bottom of the list. Trying to ignore him, Chloe simply turns her face away, but Damian says that if that is not the case, he hopes she does not refuse. Someone interrupts this awkward moment asking if Damian is tormenting the young lady. This is the first Prince Johannes, who for some reason seems to be dehydrated. Approaching, the prince comments that if the young lady has already declined the invitation, he should not insist. And putting his arms around the Duke, he asks if his friend has forgotten his manners from being so long on the battlefield. Damian simply replies that inviting a young lady to dance is not against etiquette. Besides, the young lady is not fragile and cries easily. The poor girl just looks at the ground without responding, realizing that he is still the same as 3 years ago. The prince, noticing that he will not get another reaction from Damian, simply lets out a long sigh, apologizing for his cousin for being rude. Chloe decides to take a stand, seeing where this situation is heading. So she respectfully asks His Majesty to understand, but that probably the Duke was just concerned that she would be left without being invited to dance because of her condition. He then notices that Chloe is bolder than he imagined, and asks her name, to which she replies that it is Chloe Verger, the eldest daughter of the Viscount. Suddenly, he places his hand on her shoulder, impressed that she is from the House of Verger, and says that he would very much like to meet the Viscount since he is a very intriguing man who raised his daughters, especially the eldest, to be a rose, but with thorns. But Chloe seems to be unable to pay attention, bothered by that hand on her exposed shoulder. To get rid of the prince's hand, she then bows, apologizing to His Majesty, since she came today with her younger sister and not with her father. At that moment, she realizes that it has been a while since she last saw Alice in the center of the hall, worried about where she could have gone, afraid that another scandal might happen. The prince says he is busy, but asks if he can meet Chloe's younger sister in the future, heading towards several other nobles. The prince calls Damian to go with him and get that rude look off his face. Meanwhile, Chloe is panicking, thinking about what she will do to find her sister. The last time she saw her was dancing with the young noble. Damian, noticing the change in Chloe's expression, asks exactly what the poor girl is worried about, which is where her sister is. She tries to disguise it, saying that the hall is very large so she can't see her, but that she will look for her. Well, before she can leave, Damian calls her name again, and while holding her hand, which is on the cane, he asks if she remembers their agreement. That secret agreement they made alone? Damian comments that the agreement was about the cane, and Chloe responds that at least if he is going to give her a new cane, he should let go of her hand. Getting very close to her face, he replies that she shouldn't worry, since she will receive the cane soon. Again, seeming like a child wanting to tease the person they like, he takes the cane from Chloe's hand, remembering that this is not the same one from that day, and that she probably got a new one. Noticing that Chloe this time did not react much, he comments that she is probably too desperate to find her sister to even argue with him, which was obviously true. So, she just turns her face in silence, offering her hand to accompany the protagonist. Damian says it wouldn't be good if Chloe's sister were doing something inappropriate, again inviting her to look for Alice together since the castle is immense. And who better to guide her than the owner of the castle himself? Already outside, he asks if he is walking too fast, to which Chloe says no, but it is obvious that he still hasn't given the girl her cane. Poor thing, the Duke says he is impressed, as it seems that Chloe has been practicing walking alone, but in reality she is shaking quite a bit with difficulties. He comments that probably the training she did must have been very painful, to which Chloe, squeezing his arm for support, says it is very generous of him. Instead of looking for Alice, he keeps making comments that she is very strong, trying to compliment her, but actually with a tone of irony. And the poor girl, shaking all over, regretting not having been able to get her cane back. Still, she manages to disguise it enough for them to continue walking in search of Alice. Upon arriving at the garden, Damian comments that the wind is quite strong in that area, and, noticing Chloe, he asks who put the accessories in Chloe's hair, to which she comments that she did it herself. Again, Damian comments that that's why the accessories look quite messy. Chloe feels embarrassed, but just responds that she would like her cane back. Damian comments that he heard rumors of a young lady running in this direction, which makes Chloe worried as it could indeed be her sister. And she just hopes that her sister is not in trouble or up to something. Hearing some suspicious noises, if you know what I mean, the two pause. Chloe feels completely embarrassed by what she witnesses. She finds Alice, thank God, in a wrinkled outfit with another guy. Startled, Alice tries to push the guy away who keeps kissing her. Chloe, still in shock, asks what her sister thinks she is doing. Pushing the guy who apparently is not very keen on listening, Alice tells him to run away or he might get killed, to which the guy responds that he will die very happy. Chloe is even more shocked to hear Alice call the guy Eddie. She remembers that some time ago Alice mentioned meeting a bohemian at the village festival and that he was very interesting and even said she would really like to meet him again. Chloe looks away and questions how long her sister has been seeing this guy. Damian, noticing the concern, places his hand on the protagonist's shoulder and asks if she is okay. She bows, apologizing to the Duke for the situation. After getting rid of the guy, Alice says that Eddie appeared out of nowhere and that she was caught off guard. Irritated, Alice just tells her sister to be quiet and apologizes to Damian, but she would like to talk to her sister alone, saying that she will just send her home. Alice is already showing concern, as she knows she messed up a lot and got caught. Chloe tells her sister to wait in the garage, which she does, running without thinking twice. Damian just watches in silence, until he comments that it seems the second daughter of Lord Verdier is going to cause a stir again. Apparently, Alice has a talent for causing scandals in high society. Trembling, Chloe begs the Duke not to mention anything about what he witnessed today. Obviously, he takes the moment to question why he should do this, commenting that he is sure he wouldn't even be against it if he decides to punish the Verdier family for bringing someone from outside to the residence of a duke. Chloe knows that very bad things can happen if she can't convince Damian, and her family is not in a favorable condition today. Desperate, she gives up trying to find another way and drops her cane. She kneels in front of the Duke, saying that all of this is her fault for not keeping an eye on her sister. Therefore, she begs him to punish her and not her family. Seeing that there is no response, Chloe says that she is begging while keeping her head down. He questions what she will do if he refuses. The poor thing doesn't even know how to respond, and it's obvious that this was the perfect opportunity for him to continue irritating her. The protagonist quickly tries to think of something to respond and manages to convince him. She needs to think of something fast for the sake of Alice and her father. So she says that the House of Thysse is a family that values honor, and he, as the only heir, is a famous commander who led his army to victory in the war, and was the first to receive a merit order from the royal family. Damian takes advantage of the pause Chloe gave to say that he is enjoying this sweet talk. The protagonist comments that he once mentioned, that he would do whatever it takes to lead his soldiers to victory and bring glory alongside those who fight by his side. It was precisely at that time that the lord of a remote castle opened his doors, showing hospitality to the soldiers. Damian understands very well where she is going with this, insinuating that he should return the favor for being from the honorable house of Thysse. However, she corrects him, saying that she just wants him to show compassion to a humble family. The Duke comments that, in fact, he already returned the favor when he invited the two daughters of the Viscount to the party that gathers the most prestigious families in the kingdom. Therefore, Chloe should be blaming her sister for missing such an opportunity. However, before he leaves, Chloe holds his leg, asking him to wait. He questions what she is doing. Desperate, she says that if he lets it pass this time, she promises to do whatever he wants and never forget his kindness. This was her last resort. The Duke lifts Chloe's face, asking why she is doing this, and still provokes her by asking where that fearless woman from 3 years ago went. He adds that holding his feet like this, and saying that she will do everything he desires does not suit her. At that moment, the fireworks from the party light up the sky. If he weren't so cruel to her, I would be hoping for a kiss here. But anyway, he comments that probably her sister's marital situation must be making her act this way, precisely because her marriage will be a way to improve the family's finances. So they expect to marry her for convenience. Damian asks what would become of Chloe's life then. Doesn't she care about that? To which she responds that no, after all, her happiness is seeing the people she loves well off. Approaching her face, he asks if she is willing to do anything for that to happen, to which she affirms yes. The answer does not please the Duke at all, who raises his hand to her cheek, saying that he will think about what she can do, and tells her to go home, which she says she wants to do as soon as possible. However, His Majesty had asked to meet Alice. Before she finishes the sentence, the Duke says that from this moment on, if she behaves in a way that attracts the attention of Johannes or any other man in the Empire, he will kill her and her entire family, warning that this is the limit of his generosity. Before releasing her, Damian says that he suggests she not go to that garden with a man she does not trust, since it is a garden frequented by lovers who come to satisfy their passions, unless she is hoping that rumors between them will spread, leaving Chloe still on the ground alone. The poor thing doesn't have much to do. She just thinks about how despicable he is. A few days later, Chloe is in her room addressing Duke Damian von Thesi in her letter, saying that 3 months have passed since she returned to her home after the ball. There have already been talks about Alice's marriage to a young nobleman who danced with her that day. Therefore, her family is very happy since the young man is a person of great moral standing. And as she knows this is the fruit of the Duke's generosity, after much thought on how to repay this, she came to the conclusion. At this moment, she pauses, thinking about how best to write this part. However, Gilles appears bringing tea and some cookies. She asks how Alice is. Gilles replies that she left early, but after returning, she locked herself in her room and is refusing all food, saying she has a stomachache. Hearing that her sister left, Chloe becomes worried if her sister went to meet that guy again, to which Gilles responds that it is unlikely since Alice seems to have matured quite a bit. The protagonist even believes this. After all, she has promised to marry Count Gourmier, and he is a good person. Therefore, she is sure that Alice will be happy with him, much better than an itinerant man. Gilles comments that if Miss Alice gets married, he is concerned that Chloe will feel lonely. Smiling, the protagonist replies that this won't happen since he will be there, which catches the boy off guard. She, noticing that he became shy, changes the subject, asking him to help her with the writing of the letter, precisely because the sender is ill-humored and will probably find something to complain about regardless of how she writes. Looking at the letters, the employee says that if he is the way she describes, he will likely complain if it takes too long to receive the letter. They are interrupted by her father rushing in through the door. With a smile on his face, he tells her to get ready, because Duke Thise is coming to hunt in their state. This makes Chloe tremble just thinking about meeting him again, feeling cornered as her father says he received the news abruptly, but it could be due to the passion for hunting and their lands being great for it. Sometime later, the Vertier family greets the Duke's arrival. The Viscount asks if the Duke had a good trip. However, Damian only replies that the Viscount has fewer servants than last time, trying to explain that it was due to the poor harvest they had last year. But Chloe cuts the sentence in half, changing the subject by saying that the castle is still a bit disorganized since they received the news of his arrival a bit last minute. As he approaches, Damian agrees, saying that a noble who does not know how to graciously welcome a guest does not deserve a title. Later at the dinner table, the Viscount apologizes to the Duke, but Alice will not be able to attend. He replies that he hopes it is nothing serious and that she recovers soon. While they dine, Damian notices that Chloe is distracted, and then comments that it seems she is not enjoying the food very much. Wanting to provoke her again, the protagonist comments that due to the hot day, she has no appetite. Her father tries to lighten the mood by saying that his daughter must be nervous with the Duke's presence, saying that she loves nature very much and enjoys napping while reading a book. Damian comments that she must know the region very well, to which her father agrees, saying that she knows the forest as if it were a part of the house. However, there was an incident where she returned very ill from a day out in the forest. Even when she got better, she continued going there. Damian looks at her, interested in what he heard. The blabbermouth father even mentions that it was around the time they were camping in the area with the soldiers. Gilles appears to fill Chloe's glass and asks if she is okay. Leaning closer to her face, she thanks him for the water, while Damian does not seem to like the interaction. Then comments that if she knows the forest very well, he would like her to guide him tomorrow. Her father tries to deny, saying that her condition will only hinder the hunt. But before he finishes speaking, the Duke interrupts him, saying that he would like to know the young lady's opinion. Nervous, Chloe knows she won't be able to refuse regardless of what she says. She then says that if she can have one of the staff and her horse, she will accompany him with great pleasure. However, Damian refuses, saying that she will go with him on his horse, saying that as she imagines he is not the type to follow behind others. The next morning, Chloe is already ready, waiting to leave. Damian approaches with the horse, inviting her to ride with him. She hesitates a bit, afraid it won't be safe since she has never had a lesson riding with another person, especially being someone she cannot trust. But he interrupts her thoughts, telling her to come quickly. Handing his cane to Gilles, he questions if she will be okay, while Damian is already showing his jealousy towards the two. During the journey, the Duke comments that she and that servant seem quite close. Chloe explains that Gilles has been with them since he was little. When all the others left due to lack of payment, he chose to stay with the Vertiers. That's why she explains that to her. He is much more than a servant. Without warning, he speeds up the horse. While Chloe is scared, he asks her to be quick and tell him which direction they should go. Quickly, she says left, and everyone follows the path swiftly. As soon as they arrive at the hunting site, Damian comments that it seems his soldiers caught a very large moose. While Chloe freaks out without even being able to hear what he is doing, She is sure he did it on purpose. Noticing that Chloe is in shock, he covers her eyes with his hand, telling her to breathe slowly while she finally lets go of the reins. Calming down upon hearing the Duke's words, just a comment, but if he weren't so handsome, she surely wouldn't be giving in like this. Later, back at the mansion, Chloe comments that she will call a doctor as soon as dawn breaks. Her father asks if something happened, and she replies that the Duke got hurt when he was attacked by a wild animal. He explains that he was actually bitten while chasing it on foot, since it wasn't exciting enough on horseback. Alice comments that if it's a small wound, Chloe can make a bandage. While attacking her food, she says that they don't have any anesthetic, so he will have to endure the pain. Chloe tries to say that the doctor is on the way, but Alice says that there have been many cases of illness recently, so the doctor must be very busy, and therefore he shouldn't monopolize the time of the only doctor. Damian responds that he certainly wouldn't want to take a valuable resource away from the people of the domain. After all, he was just a guest there. While laughing, he asks if Chloe could take a look at the wound after lunch. Even so, she tries to say that it would be better to leave it to a professional. Even the Viscount tries to intervene, but the Duke says that in the past she took care of the soldiers, and that image is etched in his memory, so he is sure she will do an incredible job. This makes the Viscount happy that the Duke remembers this. Looking at Chloe, he says he hasn't forgotten any details from that time. Apparently, he takes pleasure in provoking her. Later, Chloe arrives in his room with the first aid kit. Damian comments that she looks like a prisoner being taken to her end. A simple task shouldn't generate so much dread. Ignoring the comment, she just approaches and tells him to show the wound. He asks why she doesn't look for the wound herself, to which she replies that he should at least roll up his sleeves. The Duke shows his arm, saying that Chloe is capable of doing this on her own. The protagonist says that with all due respect. It is not appropriate for a single woman like her to touch a man's body. He starts unbuttoning his shirt, saying that, "I suppose you are right." The protagonist is in shock at what she sees. The shirt falls to the floor, and Damian comments that he knows it's hard to resist, but it would be better if she didn't look so much. Poor thing is in shock at seeing a handsome man shirtless for the first time, especially since she didn't ask him to take off his shirt. Keeping her composure, she disinfects the wound on his arm. She says it will probably be painful, and he just replies that he hopes she makes him feel a lot of pain. While she treats the wound, he asks if her tutor was a doctor, to which she agrees. Damian says that this is really useful in situations like this. She explains that although she learned a bit of medicine from him, but is a different pursuit entirely that is coming in use now. When he asks what that would be, she replies that it is embroidery. This makes the Duke laugh, saying that it is the first time he regarded embroidery as a useful pastime. Seeing him smile makes Chloe blush. Changing the subject, he asks if her sister still holds secret rendezvous after dark. The protagonist just tells him to stay still while she does the bandage. He insists that she answers, and then Chloe explains that since that night, Alice learned from her mistakes. And thanks to the Duke, she will marry Count Cormier. Until he says that if he had known that his silence would be rewarded with not hearing anything from her for 3 months, he wouldn't have done that favor for her. Looking at the Duke, she can only say that he is very close until the Duke asks her to respond. Chloe explains that she wrote several letters, but she ended up not being able to send any. He gets even closer to her, saying that her attempt to lie disappoints him. The poor thing all flushed trying to push him away, while he insists she tell the truth. Until then, she says it's because he despises her. She knows very well how unbearably repulsive he finds her, and that's why she hesitated to send it since she wasn't sure how to reward him. Standing up to leave, she apologizes and says she has finished the bandage. However, as soon as she gets up, she slips on his shirt that was on the floor, dropping everything that was in her hand. But before she falls, the Duke acts quickly and catches her in midair. A loud noise echoes in the room from all the things that fell to the floor. In the next moment, she is lying on the bed with him on top. Chloe notices that due to the effort, the wound has opened a bit. And without getting off him, he replies that it doesn't matter since she can redo it. Not knowing how to get out of this situation, Chloe gathers her courage and asks the Duke what exactly he wants from her. He takes a strand of hair, and as he brings it closer to his mouth, he replies that she knows exactly what he wants. Is it allowed to freak out over this scene even though he is toxic? Ow, just get married already. The protagonist turns her face away, saying that she was only there to treat the wound at her father's request. Again, he asks, insinuating if she really thinks that was her father's only intention. Irritated because it's already the second time, Chloe replies that she understands why he doubts people's intentions, having learned never to trust people during the war. However, to think that all the women in the kingdom are desperate to marry him is a bit of an egotistical delusion. This response catches the Duke off guard. He starts to laugh, of course without getting off the poor thing, and she can only think that maybe he really is crazy, until he finally stops laughing and asks if they should put her theory to the test. Helping her to get up, the Duke says that she has already finished what she went there to do, so she could leave. Back in her room, Chloe questions why she spent so long agonizing over an apology letter to a guy like that. Picking up the glove that was next to the letter, she feels foolish for even thinking about giving a gift along with it. Remembering the things he said, she gets irritated thinking that she should have used a thicker needle on his arm. However, she controls herself and realizes that she shouldn't let her emotions take over, especially since it was because of him that Alice will marry a good man. Looking at the sky, the protagonist is sure that as soon as her sister gets married, things will stabilize and everything will be fine. The next morning, Alice even ends up drooling after hearing the news. And she asks Chloe if she is sure the Duke hurt his arm and not his head. Placing the cup on the table, he repeats again what he said, that he would like to propose a marriage to the daughter of the Viscount Alice Verdier. Their father tries to deny it, explaining that there had already been talks of marriage with Count Cormier. Calmly, Damian drinks his tea and says he knows that, but even so, it doesn't change his interest in marriage. And he asks if the Viscount doesn't think he is suitable enough, which is why he keeps commenting on unnecessary things. The atmosphere becomes tense, realizing that the Duke is serious. Even so, the Viscount replies that this is not the case, but he would like to respect his daughter's wishes. Finishing his tea, the Duke stands up and says he will wait 3 days for them to talk and give an answer. And in the meantime, he will be staying at his villa in the neighboring state. Laughing at the situation, he concludes that he hopes the Verdier family will consider the situation. Breaking everything in her room, Alice screams that she never wanted to be a duchess. However, she knows that this is a very good opportunity for her family. Chloe tries to comfort her sister, still not understanding what the Duke's intention was in doing this, until she remembers what he had said last night. The protagonist tells her sister that she doesn't have to do this if it's not what she wants, warning that she will talk to their father and resolve the situation. Alice is very grateful to her sister and hugs her. Even so, she asks, what will happen if she can't get married? What will become of the family? Because since the Duke made the proposal, things with the Count are over, and if she refuses... Chloe interrupts her, telling her not to cry, affirming that everything will be fine and soon she will receive a new marriage proposal, until Alice says that she is in love with Eddie. Chloe, taken by surprise, tries to explain that he is not a decent man, but her sister says that in fact she is pregnant with him. Crying, she asks what she should do. Back in her room, Chloe is trying to process what she just heard from her sister. She believes that maybe this is happening because they put too much pressure on her, and because of her condition, she feels responsible for what is happening. So for that reason, she needs to put an end to Duke's marriage proposal. The next morning, she is already in her father's office, who questions why she came so early. And Chloe explains that she would like to talk about Alice's marriage, saying that she thought a lot about the subject last night. Her father interrupts her, saying that the possibility of Alice marrying into the Tissy family is equally concerning and reassuring. Chloe asks what he means by that. The Tissy family values honor. Therefore, they will not send Alice back if they find any kind of flaw in her character or conduct, precisely because the Duke knows very well how cruel the fate of a person who divorces in this kingdom is. Chloe, seeing where this conversation is heading, decides to lay her cards on the table and warns that she has something to tell her father. But before she can speak, Gilles enters the room calling both of them, saying that, Miss Alice. The Viscount runs out asking what he means. What does he mean by that? How could she have disappeared? Then Gilles shows a letter he found in her room this morning. As soon as the Viscount reads the letter, it says, To my beloved father and dear sister, I grew up, witnessing, an infinite love that father had for mother. That's why I learned that true love transcends illness and death, precisely because of this. He is the living proof of the power of love. Therefore, I would no longer like to ignore what my heart desires, and I wish to hold my head high for the sake of the child I carry in my womb, besides proving to myself that no love should be forbidden. I do not wish to tarnish the name of the Verger family, and for that reason, I will live only with Alice. I'm sorry, please, do not forgive me for this selfish act. Besides that, Chloe, I'm very sorry. I hope to repay you one day. Upon finishing reading the letter, the Duke simply faints, and in the end, Alice still said that no matter how ungrateful a daughter she was, he could be sure that she is sincere when she says she loves him, and with a heavy heart and a million apologies, she signs the end of the letter with her name, without the Verdier. Sometime later, back in the chambers, the Viscount asks Chloe if she already knew about this, to which she replies that she was aware that there was a man Alice was interested in. Her father knew that the fact that Chloe hadn't mentioned this man was precisely because she did not approve of this relationship, and probably, he was not a good match for Alice. However, Chloe responds that if Alice ran away, even knowing all the disapproval, he was probably a worthy man. After all, she trusts her sister and everything will be fine. Therefore, she asks her father to just focus on getting better, warning that regarding Duke Tissy, she will resolve and talk to him. Already in the hallway, the protagonist questions Gilles if he just pretended not to see Alice running away. After all, Chloe knew, the moment he entered holding that letter, that he would never have entered Alice's room without permission. The guy just confesses, saying that there is no way he could hide anything from her. But to her surprise, Chloe just thanks him for being with Alice at that moment, since not even she knew what the right thing to do was, but is grateful that he stayed with Alice during such a difficult moment and helped her escape. Now, what happened is in the past, and they must focus on doing the best they can from now on. Hearing those words, Gilles tries to console her, but holds back due to his position, wishing only that she does not blame herself, and that she does not try to take responsibility for everything that happened. Since if that happens, he doesn't know how he will be able to live thinking about it. However, the protagonist responds that at that moment she is the only one who can take care of the House of Verdier now, and for that reason, she will find a way to make them all survive, even if it means making a dangerous choice. While the handsome Duke is in his villa peacefully enjoying the view, 3 days later in the village where the Duke is staying, he comments that it is unexpected and asks if Chloe found his marriage proposal so intriguing that she came to discuss the decision in person. The protagonist explains that it is something she could not just discuss in a letter. And changing the subject, he asks if she happens to have any infectious disease. Not understanding what he means by that, she questions him, to which he replies that, if that is not the case, she can very well come closer and sit next to him. Seeing that Chloe is hesitating, he questions whether she is going to disobey his order. And of course, she quickly sits beside him. The Duke comments that his injury has not improved since then, to which Chloe responds by asking if he has seen a doctor, and he denies it. Showing a case full of a bottle with liquid, Damian asks if she can apply this solution for him, showing that he does not like this at all with his expression, "Don't you have hands to do it yourself?" He comments that this is exactly what he can read on her face. Obviously, Chloe denies and takes the little jar, and while applying it, she comments that the days are very hot, which hinders the healing of the wound. Therefore, it would be ideal for him to stay indoors as much as possible, since being outside will only hinder the healing process. Showing his muscular definition, Damian comments that in his state he does not usually have such pleasant summers as this, and that he likes the feeling of burning from head to toe, while Chloe tries not to look too much at that body sculpture. Returning to the subject of marriage, the Duke questions why his proposal was rejected. She explains that marriage is now physically unfeasible for her sister. Obviously, he asks the reason. The protagonist hesitates to tell the truth, and before she does, she asks if she can ask a question first. As soon as he agrees, Chloe asks if the reason he wants to marry her sister is because of her, and if his intention in joining her family is just to bring about her complete and utter ruin, which makes the Duke laugh upon hearing this. He asks if she remembers what he said the other day. Thinking that every woman in the kingdom is desperate to marry him was a selfish illusion, saying that he believes it is she, Lady Chloe, who is so egocentric that she lives in delusion. Which makes her embarrassed for having asked the previous question. Damian asks if she really believes that he would marry a daughter of a family that is clearly in debt just to torment his disabled sister Chloe, says that he is right, and that it really is unlikely, and he responds that she is surprisingly amusing sometimes. Then he asks if the reason is that he loves Alice. He is impressed that she sees him as someone so romantic that he would marry just for love. If that is not the reason, Chloe says she only has one explanation for why he proposed this marriage. He probably has some pressing reason that he must marry a daughter of the Verdier family, a reason that he cannot simply tell others. She continues saying that if he really has a reason for rejecting all the eligible women in the kingdom to propose marriage to a low-rank family, it is probably because it does not matter who he marries, which means that he might even prefer to marry a woman with such an obvious flaw that no one would give her a second glance. He leans in and asks if she means a woman who has lost the use of one of her legs. The determined protagonist, without moving her gaze, says that she would probably be a perfect bride for him. Suddenly, he kisses her. Catching us all by surprise as things escalated very quickly, Chloe returns the kiss. However, when he pauses from the kiss, she pulls her hand away from his face, asking what he thinks he is doing, to which he replies that she always makes cutting remarks that he was curious to know how sharp her tongue was. Embracing her and giving a kiss on her neck, Damian says that this is the perfect opportunity to ask if she is capable of giving him an heir. Feeling disrespected, Chloe slaps the Duke's face, saying that him acting this way before even responding to the proposal is totally disrespectful on his part. The Duke responds that this is indeed an appropriate response. However, he suggests that she familiarize herself with the principles of negotiation again and asks her to leave a few days later. Chloe is in the office with someone talking, but in reality she is completely distracted, remembering the kiss from that day and the voice of that man calling her name until she returns to reality. Hearing Gilles is calling her again, worried as she seems pale. She says she is fine and asks him to continue what he was saying. Gilles explains that with the news of the marriage, the royal family continues to send gifts to Alice. The garden is full of boxes piled to the top with presents. This makes him question whether the conversation with the Duke was not good. Hearing this, Chloe wonders if her intuition was correct. Prince Johannes is the official heir to the throne, but there is another person whose power is comparable to that of the royal family. That would be Duke Dis, which is why the royal family must be very pleased with the news of this engagement, Since marrying a daughter from a humble family like that of a viscount instead of a prestigious family, they are interrupted by a butler who enters the room. He announces that a guest has just arrived, informing that it is Duke Damian, and also questions if he should notify the viscount. Chloe stands up and informs that her father is ill, so he should not disturb him, and asks to take the Duke to the drawing room, and she will change to meet him. As soon as they arrive in her room, they are surprised by the presence of the Duke there, and he comments that she seems surprised to see him there. The protagonist replies that it is very improper to enter a young lady's room uninvited, to which he jokes that he couldn't help himself since he missed her so much. Chloe tries to say that he should wait in the drawing room, but he approaches and questions if that is really necessary, since their relationship will soon be of the kind that does not require privacy from each other. Gilles is shocked by the scene he sees and how he treats her, irritated that the servant has not yet left the room. He orders him to close the door. Obviously, he complies with the command, but he feels powerless for not being able to say anything. How pitiful, he seems like a puppy. A box with a necklace and earrings is placed on the table, and Damian explains that these jewels have been passed down for generations in the Thesi family. The right thing would be for his mother to pass them to the daughter-in-law as a tradition, but she is not very in favor of this marriage. Knowing that it is not the best option, Chloe simply says that this was expected. The Duke observes as she looks down, and asks if she is pretending to stay calm. Or does she really not care? She apologizes for reacting in an unexpected way, but she is apprehensive about not knowing what he will say, and finally questions if he means to say that he accepted the proposal. While holding the necklace, Damian replies that yes. Approaching her, he says, "Chloe Verdier, will you accept to be my wife?" The protagonist bows, saying that she is very grateful for him deciding to accept her proposal. Not liking this reaction very much, he questions her if she is really grateful. As soon as she agrees, Damian asks how she will prove that, to which she responds that she will do her best to be of assistance in every endeavor he undertakes. Teasing her as always, he asks what she thinks he wants. And seeing that she does not respond, the Duke asks if he will have to run his tongue across her parched lips again to make her open her mouth. Quickly responding to the question, Chloe says that she believes he wants power, but she is too short-sighted to know exactly what he is thinking. Irritated, Damian says that from that moment on she is forbidden to say that again, because he knows very well that she is not short-sighted. A bit moved by her attitude, the protagonist says that she will do everything in her power to assist him, and as soon as he wants a divorce in the future, she will simply accept the request immediately. Upon hearing about the divorce, Damian says that it is very insolent of her, and this arrogance irritates him. She apologizes and asks him not to misinterpret her intentions. Damian, intrigued, asks what Chloe's intentions are. The protagonist replies that she wants to be a duchess. Without answering her, he stands up and puts the necklace around Chloe's neck. Then he asks how it feels to wear the jewel of the Thesi house around her neck. Embarrassed, she replies that it is heavy. Damian explains that the weight is nothing compared to the responsibility of being the wife of a duke, and if she truly wishes to be his wife. Chloe looks at him and says that it is what she wants most in the world. Pulling her face closer, he asks if she has thought better about her negotiation techniques. If so, what does she think he wants at this moment? Suddenly, Chloe pulls the handkerchief from around his neck and gives a slightly embarrassed kiss, which he reciprocated passionately. However, as soon as he deepens the kiss, she lets go of the handkerchief and steps back, embarrassed. The Duke questions if this is too much for her. Besides, he doesn't want to lie, but things are going to get more intense. Guys, if he weren't so toxic, he would be perfect. Later, sitting in the living room with the Viscount, the Duke says that Chloe will make a great duchess. Obviously, his father proudly says that for sure, since his daughter is very smart and will earn everyone's respect. And if the Duke can make her happy, the Viscount is willing to offer everything, even his own life. Chloe finally looks at his hand and sees that he is wearing the glove she was going to give as a gift. Wondering what time he took the gift from her room, Damian says that if the Viscount insists, he would accept the forest and the mountain that goes all the way to the state of Verdier. The Viscount is confused. After all, that place has barren land and the trees cannot be used for anything. Showing his skills as a charmer, Damian says that there is the lake adored by Lady Chloe moreover. That location is where things began between them, using her again as a pawn to achieve his goals. A few days later, the wedding actually takes place, and the bishop asks if he accepts to fulfill his role and stand by his wife through all the trials and tribulations. Beautiful and wearing the family necklace, Chloe awaits the answer. Damian then responds that he accepts. The bishop asks the couple to seal this agreement with a kiss, and Chloe closes her eyes. But to her surprise, Damian kisses her cheek and asks if she was expecting something else. Poor thing doesn't even respond, but by the color of her cheeks, he was right. A total of 2 guests applaud the wedding, while the Viscount says that his daughter looks wonderful. Gilles can't believe how things took this turn. Thus, the Duke's wedding is officially concluded. As they walk to leave the altar, Damian calls Chloe, who looks at him in silence, being surprised as he picks her up in his arms, even though she is against the situation. She is left speechless when he questions if she intends to drag this out. Understanding the request, she wraps her arms around his neck, and he simply says, Well done, Chloe von Tisse. Oh guys, such a beautiful wedding in chapter 15. I want them to fall more in love. A few days later, in the village, people comment that they heard the Duke left the state of Verdier as soon as the ceremony ended. It even seems like he left in a hurry and didn't spend the first night with his bride. Giles hears the rumors from people outside, still commenting if perhaps the Duchess will be left alone for 3 months. In a tailor shop, a girl comments about Duke this. It seems that the newspaper reported that even after the wedding, the Duke couldn't extinguish an overwhelming passion and was seen strolling with the Marchioness Isabella. And unfortunately, the one reading this newspaper is none other than our protagonist, Chloe. The maid asks if she should burn this paper, but Chloe says it won't be necessary. After all, burning the news won't stop the rumors. Chloe says that if she has finished taking the measurements, she will take her leave. However, the girl comments that she still needs to discuss the design and also the material that will be used. But wanting to leave that place soon, she says the girl can choose what she thinks is best since she is the one with more knowledge about it. And so she leaves the tailor's shop. While getting into the carriage outside, people continue talking and gossiping, commenting that men are incapable of controlling themselves and will ruin the country. Already in the carriage, Gilles asks Chloe why she doesn't leave the administration of the state to others, at least for now, affirming that he himself could handle some business in her place. But the protagonist denies and says that everything is fine. Gilles is worried and says he doesn't want her to attract unnecessary attention, especially after that news. However, Chloe has another thought. If she wants people to see her as the Duchess, allowing herself to be shaken by these unfounded rumors will only make people more anxious. As they return home, Chloe remembers the events of the wedding day. The Duke, already mounted on his horse, says that he will return to the capital now that the ceremony is over, saying that she should perform her role in the duchy of her own house. However, not once in these 3 months did he respond to any of Chloe's letters, and she wonders if that woman would be the reason. Even though she wasn't expecting anything from that marriage, the protagonist does everything to ensure that this does not affect her. However, Guise is seeing that the poor girl is not well. He then calls her and says he has good news waiting for her back home, saying that it is a letter that arrived from Miss Alice. It was short, but it said that she was well. Happy with the news, Chloe asks why he didn't tell her this before, and comments that she is very happy to finally hear from Alice again. After all, that has always been her goal, to know that her sister is safe and happy, and her father is in much better health. Moreover, her marriage has also put the people of the state in high spirits, and thinking about it, maybe she really prefers to live away from him. Her only wish is that she can enjoy this peace forever. Sometime later at night, the Duke is reading Chloe's letter saying that, as she mentioned in her previous letters, everything is well in the state of Verdier, thanks to the Duke, and that she hopes the work he needed to resolve will be finished soon, and that as soon as she has more news, she will write again. Sincerely signing as Chloe Verdier. The Duke, reading the letter, laughs at seeing that she signed with her family name, questioning whether she perhaps does not intend to take his surname. At his desk, he looks at that news of him with the Marchioness, and is sure that Chloe also heard the rumors, but still, she did not write anything about it, questioning how that news made her feel. Did she cry? But knowing her, she probably just held it in, as always, unaware that is precisely what aggravates him most. He chuckles, just imagining that she got jealous of him. In another piece of news, he sees written that the secret romance of Duke Tisse, during what should have been his honeymoon, secured the position of heir prince of Johannes, and rumors of the king's declining health continue to circulate. Damian is happy to see that they reported exactly what he had asked. And looking at that, it reminded him of Chloe's words, when she said that power was what he wanted, and that is why she would do everything to help him. Commenting aloud as if he were responding to that memory, Damian says that her phrase was even presumptuous, since she simply would not be able to do anything to help him. He knows that whenever he thinks of her, there comes a feeling of possessing something, showing how obsessed he is, lucky that he is handsome. Since he saw her for the first time, she irritated him by tending to the wounded when she could easily be mistaken for one of them. The strange feeling that arose in him every time he saw her that way left a bitter taste in his mouth, looking at the glove that he stole. But it was a gift. He thinks that maybe next time he should lock her in a room and make her just sew all day. And as soon as she finishes all the fabrics, he would make her embroider his body. Oh, I'm trying to ignore this toxicity, but it's hard. Help me, Damian. On another day, at the royal palace, the king comments to Damian that it is probably close to the time for God to call him, and with that, he believes that the Duke will be able to serve Johannes even when he departs. Saying that he believes Damian knows that the prince is not in the best psychological state, then he asks the Duke to swear before God that he will be loyal to Johannes. Obviously, he is not a puppet, and says that he will be loyal if he is a king worthy of his loyalty. This leaves the king furious, saying that it is the duty of the servants of the kingdom to serve the king. Damian comments that then it is clear what the future of this kingdom will be. If it is ruled by someone who has gone mad without anyone noticing, He then says that he corrects his statement. After all, he and the king himself know about Johannes's madness and all those who died at his hands. There are countless rumors talking about piles of bodies being removed from the prince's room, one after another. And it won't be long before people discover that this was never actually a rumor. Holding the king's hand, Damian says that he risked his life on the battlefield for the good of this kingdom. That is why he will always be ready to fight for his country. And nothing is more just than the throne going to a man worthy of ruling this country. The king continues irritated, coughing a lot due to the gravity of his situation, questioning what Damian's intentions are. And he says that the prince's madness may be a secret now. But unfortunately, the king cannot cover the sky with just the palm of his hand. Using his last strength, the king questions since when the duke has nurtured this selfish ambition. And before leaving the room, Damian answers the question, saying that this ambition has been with him since he was born, back at the Verdier mansion. Chloe is reading a book in her office. However, it seems she is unable to concentrate, and the only thing she can think about is the Duke and the Marchioness Isabella, wondering if she should have paid more attention to that article. Trying to ignore these thoughts, she decides to do something else and stop reading that book. But before she can, her father opens the door, saying that she received a letter from the Duke, mentioning that the Duke was probably also concerned about the scandal that appeared in the newspaper. Chloe is surprised after all. He hadn't written anything to her since he left the capital over 3 months ago. When she opens the letter, he starts with, "To my dear wife, Chloe von Tisse," somewhat teasing her because she signs with her family name. Asking her to wait for him in the state of Tisse while he fulfills his role as Duke. At the end of the letter, he says he hopes she is looking forward to seeing him again and signs as her husband Damian von Tisse. Later at the mansion door, the Viscount says goodbye to both, telling Gilles to take care of Chloe, to which the young man replies that he doesn't need to worry, and the protagonist assures him that she is no longer a child, holding her eldest daughter's hand. The Viscount says that she and Alice will always be his little girls. They hug in farewell, and Chloe wishes she could say that if she could, she would live there with him forever. But she only says that she will be fine, comforting him by saying that he himself saw how the Duke takes good care of her. Well, only in front of others, right? Because in private, anyway. While Chloe smiles at her father, in her mind, she can only be sure of how she does not want to go to the Thissy territory. But there's no way our protagonist takes the train towards her new home. Inside the carriage, Gilles tells Lady Chloe that he could very well have gone in the freight car with the other servants, since he believes this place is too fancy for him. However, Chloe says it will be 2 long days of travel. Moreover, soon she will spend most of her time alone. Thus, they embark on this journey, noticing the change of season with the melting snow. Arriving at the gate of the Thys Duchy Castle, they are greeted by a woman who introduces herself as Elisa, the head maid. Chloe finds it a bit strange. After all, the castle is huge, and only one person came to welcome her, who would be the Duchess of the place, so she probably is not very welcome. Even so, she thanks the young woman and asks her to prepare a meal for her servant. Since he has had a long journey, Elisa informs that she will ask a maid to prepare something for her servant. Meanwhile, Chloe should follow her. Turning to Gilles, Chloe thanks him for accompanying her to the Duke's house and says she is very sorry for not being able to see him leave, but wishes him a safe journey back. And then she follows the head maid. Until they arrive at Damian's mother's quarters, Chloe introduces herself, saying it is an honor to meet her, and thanking her for sending a carriage to pick them up at the station. And as she does, she realizes how much she resembles the Duke's mother. Probably his beauty came from her. And the Duchess herself comments that Chloe is very beautiful, saying that she looks like the first deer Damian caught when he was just a child. The woman asks if Chloe has any hidden wealth, or if by chance she knows the rotten side of the royal family, to which Chloe clearly denies. Placing her hand on Chloe's face, the woman says that then probably Damian chose her as a wife for reasons different from practical ones. She further states that it is true that Chloe is very beautiful, but hunting a deer with a hurt leg is a bit atypical for her son. She simply could not believe what she was hearing when he asked for the family jewel because he was going to propose marriage, wondering if it was perhaps just out of curiosity. After all, her son likes a bit of excitement from time to time. The poor woman cannot even say what she thinks and only responds that the Duke would not have made a decision about something as serious as marriage just out of curiosity, and that she still does not know exactly all the reasons why he chose her, but she intends to serve him in the best way possible, and help in any way she can for the family to thrive. Seeing Chloe's attitude, the woman says that at least the girl is brighter than she thought. Commenting with a beauty equal to hers, surely the family jewels will look good. Moreover, she says that Chloe will be able to help take care of the castle, and that she trusts her son. After all, there is nothing more important to him than his family. Showing her maternal side, the woman asks if Chloe would like to hear the stories of little Damian. Exhausted, she lies down on the bed in her new room, tired of hearing so much nonsense about the Duke's childhood. She imagined that he had a very strict upbringing, but apparently he was clearly very spoiled as a child. Turning to her side to snuggle more into the bed, she notices a portrait of the Duke intentionally left by her bedside. Lying the picture frame down, she cannot understand what his intention was in placing it there. A few hours later, Chloe is sleeping peacefully, with the picture frame staring back at her. Probably she got up in case someone noticed. Sometime later, the Duke's mother comments that she was surprised the girl locked herself in the office for 3 days after arriving, saying that in this aspect, she and her son are very similar, as he forgets everything when he is focused. Getting straight to the point, the woman asks Chloe what exactly she would like to discuss. The protagonist asks Eliza to give them a little privacy, but to her surprise, or not, Madame says that Eliza has been in that house since Damian was born. Therefore, she is practically family, so there is no conversation she cannot hear. Chloe remembers the letter she received a few days ago where the Duke asks how things are at the castle, and that he trusts she will perform well as Duchess and will not disappoint him, ending the letter by saying he misses her, and signing only his name, Damian. However, what the protagonist understood from that letter was more like a warning, and that is why she was in that place confronting his mother, as after reviewing the ledgers for 3 days, she ended up discovering a discrepancy in the castle's finances, stating that part of the money is being misappropriated. But Madame, not caring much, says that taking care of a castle that size is not easy. Observing Eliza's desperate face, one can already see where this is going. Chloe continues saying that she is not sure exactly where the money is being taken, and the total taxes collected from the people do not match. There is also a discrepancy between the number of wine bottles in the cellar and the quantity recorded in the ledgers. This is something that probably did not happen just once, but several times, and from what she noticed, these irregularities began to appear more or less around the time Eliza took on the role of steward. The tension rises, and Eliza starts crying desperately. Finally, the woman asks Eliza to leave the room. She then argues with Chloe, asking why she didn't think to discuss this in private. Apologizing, Chloe still says it would be better to expel Eliza and the stable master Robinson, precisely because Eliza needed a cart to transport the stolen items from the castle, and since the volume was large, it would be impossible for her to act alone. Even hearing everything, Damian's mother says that they are both very old employees who helped in difficult times, to which Chloe responds that precisely because of that, what they are doing is unforgivable. Since if Eliza had valued your appreciation for her, she wouldn't have done this. And she warns Madame that if she lets this go, things will only get worse. She interrupts Chloe's speech and asks why the young woman is making her life so difficult, and why she continues to call her Madame if they are now family. This leaves the protagonist surprised, asking if she should call her mother. However, Damian's mother says that this would not be correct either. Getting up to leave, the woman says that the conversation ends there and that she will talk to Damian as soon as she returns. Meanwhile, Chloe can have dinner alone since she has taken away her appetite. Chloe asks if she should ask to send dinner to Madame's room, which irritates the woman even more, telling the protagonist to be quiet and stop responding to everything she says. Before leaving, she still says that Chloe can be quite annoying. The poor girl is left there disheartened. It's not enough that the crazy Duke disrespects her. Now his mother does too. Sometime later, in the dining room, the maid serves a glass of water. And leaving, she says that if she needs anything, just call. Chloe looks at her plate with almost no food, which doesn't even look that appetizing. Even so, she decides to eat. Better than starving. However, she realizes that she managed to make everyone hate her. In the corridors earlier, she heard some maids gossiping, saying that the new Duchess was trying to fire Eliza and accusing the Duke of not having chosen his wife better. After all this, she ends up losing her appetite and worries if her father is doing well. Also if Gilles returned safely, and even if Alice wrote another letter, thinking that maybe when the Duke returns, things will get better, but she knows very well that this is an illusion. After all, apparently cornering people is a habit of the Thesi family. While the poor Stake suffers, the protagonist says out loud that she doesn't know who is worse, the mother or the son. Surprised, she hears someone's voice saying that she must be having a pleasant conversation alone. As he approaches, Damian says that it's not like her to be talking to herself. It could be because he made her feel very lonely while he was away. Chloe quickly stands up to greet him properly, but before she can say anything, the door to the room opens. Her mother rushes in to greet her son, saying it was almost a dream, that he should have warned that he was coming. And Mommy's baby responds that he came back quickly because he missed her. We all have the same expression as Chloe watching this scene. The woman, placing her hand on his face, says that the trip must have been tiring since he looks thinner, which he disagrees with, saying he traveled very comfortably in first class on the train. Looking at the table, he comments that running home made him hungry, and his mother happily says she will ask the chef to prepare something. However, he refuses, saying that there is already enough on the table. Looking at that shabby food, even Chloe feels embarrassed by the food. He asks for another table setting to be added. The table is set, and it seems that there was actually more food than it appeared. Damian asks if everything was all right while he was away, to which she agrees, saying that everyone was very kind to make his arrival comfortable. However, as soon as he puts a piece of that dry steak in his mouth, he drops the fork, knocking over the wine glass. After spitting out the meat, he asks to call a doctor urgently. His mother, worried, asks what happened and why they need to call the doctor. The Duke says that as the only doctor in the family, he failed to take care of everyone's health, and for that, he must be punished. The madam says she is in perfect health, but Damian says that the fact that they are eating such tasteless food without even complaining can only mean that something is very wrong with her taste buds. Embarrassed, his mother says that there is nothing wrong with her, and that they don't need to punish the doctor. Worried, he asks if his mother is sure. After all, the steak is extremely tough, the vegetables dry and wilted. The soup was clearly prepared days ago. Even the wine is not suitable for a meal at the Thesa house, asking if his mother was already aware of all this. Ordering to call the chef immediately. With all the kitchen staff there, the chef says she cannot understand how the leftover food that normally goes to the poorhouses was served to the owners of the mansion, saying that probably whoever set the table must have made a mistake. Quickly, the maids confess, apologizing for having done something so terrible. Irritated, Damian says it is not possible that they are asking for forgiveness after affronting his family, ordering to throw all the involved servants into the dungeons and rip out their organs. Chloe interrupts him, saying it was just a meal, asking him to forgive them for this small mistake. He retorts that the food was meant to be served to the poor, to which the protagonist counters that it was still edible. But Damian replies that he ordered her to fulfill her role as Duchess, since sitting at the table and eating that garbage is like insulting his name, and even if Chloe comes from a humble family, she should at least have common sense. Trying to avoid the death of several people, the protagonist apologizes and says she really failed in her role as Duchess, but as his wife and lady of the house, she begs him to control himself and show a little compassion, asking him to give them the opportunity to serve something worthy of the Thesi house. Later in her room, Chloe is again exhausted and happy, thinking that she managed to save those people's lives. After the fight, Damian conceded, saying that if that was what she wanted, he would give in, and that she really was a generous woman. Thrown on the bed, she thinks about how long the day was, but at least she didn't have to see their heads go flying. Of course, the day was not over yet, and a maid knocked on the door saying that the Duke would like to see her in his chamber. She informs the girl that she will get ready to go, but she wonders what he wanted with her at that hour of the night. Before the girl leaves, Damian enters the room asking what kind of preparation his wife might need to see him, since there is no need for decorum or appropriate dress at this hour of the night. Embarrassed, Chloe tries to cover herself, but he is already practically on the bed asking if she doesn't agree. Chloe ignores what he said and tells him to wait in the room, that she will change quickly. However, he sits on the bed showing that he is not going to leave, and that he already said she doesn't need any of that, just that she should go to her room. Clearly irritated, Chloe grabs her cane to get up, and Damian asks if she can't get out of bed without the help of the cane. While she grabs a shawl to cover herself, Chloe comments that it's not easy because she could easily fall to the floor, and even insinuates that maybe that's what he would like to see, to which Damian replies that it would indeed be delightful. He then stands up and extends his hand to her, and asks if they can go to her room, calling her wife. Already sitting there in the Duke's room, Chloe asks what the urgent matter is that he needed to discuss since it was quite late, which catches Chloe by surprise, worried if he is really referring to couple matters since not even on their wedding night after the marriage did he try anything. Tightening her shawl even more with those thoughts, Chloe simply turns her face and does not answer the question, and Damian finds it incredible because he can clearly see what she is thinking. Stopping tormenting her, he says he intends to reward her for having played her role as Duchess in an exemplary manner, which leaves Chloe a bit confused since she hasn't done anything special. Then he explains that it was precisely because she managed to get rid of Elisa and Robinson. The protagonist asks if by any chance the Duke already knew about the dishonesty of those two, and he explains that he likes his mother very much and that's why he knows how close she was to those two. So he ended up pretending not to see what was happening. Again, as he was showing that he was a mama's boy, Chloe was making a disdainful face, and he even asks if it's so shocking to hear that he loves his mother, but she disguises it and says it's not at all what he is thinking. Damian explains that even though his mother is immature and temperamental, she is the person who gave birth to him. Moreover, she will spend some time in the village they have in the south, saying that she was heartbroken for poor Elisa and Robson who were fired, which the Duke says will actually be good for his mother to change her surroundings and breathe some fresh air, besides helping Chloe to adapt more easily in the castle, which even makes her question if this plan of his to send his mother to a village far from the castle is somewhat a way of showing kindness. Placing a box on the table, he asks her to open it. When Chloe opens the box, she is surprised by its contents. Damian explains that he wanted to give something else, something more practical than a cane, especially since she has a habit of losing her cane. So that's why he chose the brace. Once she adapts, she will be able to walk comfortably without needing support, and he asks Chloe to try it on. The protagonist simply closes the box, thanking him for the gift and informing him that the choice to use it or not is up to the person receiving the gift, and that's why she will try it another time. But in reality, the poor thing was just embarrassed because she has no idea how to use it and didn't want to look strange tripping around. And maybe it's even his intention to kind of mock her. Questioning the intentions behind this gift, Damian did not like the answer at all, saying that if the choice is up to the recipient, then he believes she thinks that calling her servant to travel in the same compartment was her choice. Chloe is surprised and questions him if he had someone following her. But the Duke explains that when you are part of the Détisse household, you end up hearing all kinds of rumors, whether you want to or not. And he would also like to know what the reason was for her to show such generosity to just any servant, especially bringing them to the duchy. The protagonist says that Ji is a loyal servant who has worked for her family's household since he was a child. Obviously, the Duke retorts that Elisa also took care of him when he was just a baby, and yet she betrayed her family. All that tension, one more jealous than the other. Realizing that this discussion was going nowhere, the protagonist says she wishes he would stop insulting her. Explaining, the Duke says he is not trying to insult her, but rather giving her advice, since her so-called faithful servant has not left the Duchy of Tesse, and it won't be pleasant if people find out he is still here, especially because they will say that he probably has feelings for his lady. And in this way, more rumors will start spreading behind the Duchess's back. Chloe is surprised to hear that Gilles did not return to the state of Verdier. Why did he do that? While she was lost in her thoughts, Damian approached her, saying he can't believe she abandoned her duties as a duchess and brought shame to his name, and making his point, which was precisely to make her wear the gift. With little choice, Chloe decides to take the risk and do what he asks. However, it is more difficult than it seemed. Because she falls as soon as she tries to walk with the gift, Damian kneels nearby and asks which part of it she finds uncomfortable. When he is about to touch her leg, she asks him not to. The Duke insists she should speak up so he can fix it. Embarrassed, Chloe says the whole device is uncomfortable, as it doesn't help at all and only makes her feel pain. However, the Duke does not give up and says it will probably have the opposite effect once she gets used to it. Placing his hand on her face, he asks if she is crying. Okay, he earned some points this time. He is really trying to help, but the protagonist will not fall for that and turns her face away, saying she has no reason to cry. While he lifts her dress, he comments that crying like a child is not a duchess's behavior. He pulls her up, helping Chloe stand while she says he really is like a devil. Holding her chin, the Duke says he still has to show her just how much of a fiend he can be. The protagonist remains firm and does not fall for the Duke's charms, saying she feels resentment and does not believe him, and that she is extremely upset. Damian ignores everything she has said so far, and, moving closer, says he will ask again how she is feeling. Chloe says her heart is beating very fast. While he removes the device, he asks if her body is warming up as if there are embers burning within, if her blood is flowing so fast that she can't control her breathing, and if she feels like her heart is trying to escape from her chest. The poor girl is already enchanted, speechless. Closing her eyes, Chloe agrees, saying that is exactly why she feels resentment. Then he kisses her. The protagonist lets herself be carried away by her feelings. Responding to the kiss, Damian pulls away for a moment. He caresses her face and asks her how she feels about kissing the man she compared to the devil. Shaken, Chloe simply asks him to let her return to her room. Seeing her all nervous and embarrassed, the Duke allows her to go to her room. Sometime later, at the castle of Tis, they are discussing the train tracks that will now reach the state of Verdier. And because of this, the territory will likely develop significantly. A man asks if this is the wedding gift he is giving to his wife, and Damian asks if that is a problem. Obviously, the young man pretends, saying of course not, commenting that he is just surprised the Duke is a devoted husband, while poor Chloe is having to dine listening to all this. The other man comments that some concerning movements are being detected in the Duchy of Carter. They had declared that the war was over, but one can never know when they will attack again, since they can do so at any moment using the geographical advantage, and that is why the Duke should attack first. Still commenting that this matter may need to be treated urgently, which makes the Duke thoughtful. Noticing Chloe's disinterest, Damian says he would like to know his wife's opinion on this matter, and obviously everyone looks at her with prejudice. But before they can conclude the matter, Chloe says that even though she doesn't understand, she believes the people of Swanton are tired of the war. The Duke, liking her participation, says that maybe she is right, but wouldn't conquering the duchy be advantageous for the people of their kingdom? The protagonist replies that no one can guarantee victory in a war, nor that Carter's army will remain weak, as the noble himself just said. Carter's duchy is perfectly capable of using its geographical location as an advantage. The man says he is impressed. After all, the Duchess's knowledge is quite vast. But Damian continues to press, saying they should just sit and wait for the Carters to increase their power, especially since they have even started raising tariffs on imported goods from the Empire. What would her opinion be on that? Everyone waits, looking at Chloe. But she can only think that perhaps the Duke is trying to humiliate her in front of those men, and she will not let that happen. The two begin to argue, while the Duke says that this is a bit naive of her. After all, promises are constantly broken. But Chloe insists, saying there are ways to ensure both parties uphold the agreement without violating the treaty. And in conclusion, Chloe says that the Empire values blood ties. Therefore, there are various ways to get closer, but the most effective is precisely to form an alliance through marriage. Damian says that a marriage would indeed be beneficial. but the duchy only has one male heir and the royal family has no princesses. Chloe says that the empire has Prince Johannes, while Carter's duchy has 3 older daughters than the heir, who are still unmarried. The nobles present begin to stifle a laugh, which surprises Chloe while Damian repeats the prince's name in a mocking tone regarding the suggestion. Chloe doesn't quite understand what is happening, but it seems clear that they are mocking what she said. One of the nobles comments that being married to the prince is simply too bad to even imagine. And probably the Duchess has not been following the news from the Red Veil, which is the gossip newspaper, where there was news of the Duke with that Marchioness. He continues saying that if she read the articles about the prince, but the other noble interrupts, saying that what he is talking about brings up that newspaper, which is not respectful at all, precisely because of the rumors written in it. The Duke comments that he wouldn't know if his wife has read that newspaper or not. However, judging by her expression, it seems that she has read it. The protagonist replies that she has only read a few things, but didn't pay much attention. After all, it is just a gossip tabloid. A bit irritated, she stands up and says she will ask for dessert to be served and that the knights can continue their conversation. The 2 nobles comment that she is really very interesting and can see why the Duke anticipated this marriage. The other man even reprimands him for speaking that way. But the guy says he wasn't speaking romantically. It was just that she was interesting, commenting that it is more a form of respect he felt for her opinion. But it was too late because Chloe was already irritated with the whole situation and believed they were terrible. Later that night, Chloe begins to hear some noises. It is someone knocking on her door desperately and calling for her. As soon as Chloe opens the door, she finds a person calling for her desperately, who is Eliza wearing a cloak. Before the 2 can talk, another maid comes running, calling for Elisa, saying that she shouldn't be wandering around there because if the Duke saw her. But Elisa interrupts, asking the girl to let her go. Questioning if she knew how long she had worked in that place, she also claims to have dedicated her whole life to serving the Duke's family. Chloe tells her to calm down and say exactly why she came there. The woman explains that her grandson is very ill. It started with a fever. He lost consciousness, and now he is murmuring while he sleeps. That is why she came to ask for help so that the family doctor can examine him. The protagonist remembers that in her childhood she had something similar. She started with a fever and also cried a lot. Calling for her mother because of her past, she decides to release the doctor. What the other maid says she cannot do without the Duke's permission. Irritated, Chloe questions if that woman intends to disturb the Duke's sleep. Because she forgot who the Duchess of this castle is, the girl becomes embarrassed and says she will fetch the doctor immediately. Chloe, while grabbing a coat, tells Elisa to put her on her back. The woman is confused by the proposal, but the protagonist explains that since it is a fever, they cannot waste time, affirming that they need to be quick. Already in the quarters where the grandson is, someone asks what the Duchess is doing. She is undressing the boy who is trembling with fever. Elisa, worried, questions whether this will not get worse, since he is shaking so much and could even die from the cold. But Chloe warns her to quickly go outside to get some snow, as they need to lower his fever as soon as possible. Elisa feels somewhat hesitant about the command, yet obeys, saying that if anything happens to him, she will not forgive her. Chloe says that she can resent her as much as she wants, but if she wants to prevent her grandson from spending the rest of his life limping like she does, the best option would be to cooperate. Sometime later, the doctor explains that the Duchess did an excellent job in treating the boy, saying that he might have been in a point of no return if she hadn't done this in time. Therefore, Elisa has to be grateful to the Duchess. While crying desperately, Elisa asks what she could do to repay this favor, but Chloe says she didn't save the child to gain a reward, saying that she is just happy that the child is well, which is precisely what she lacked a little time to avoid this problem with her leg. The piece ends when the Duke opens the door to the room calling for Chloe. Everyone is surprised, and Elisa is even a bit desperate, but he just tells Chloe to talk to him outside. Chloe tries to explain that Elisa should have left 2 days ago. However, because of her grandson who fell ill, she ended up not being able to go. All the money stolen from the castle was taken by her son, who ended up losing everything in gambling. The child is innocent because it was the adults who sinned. Moreover, considering that Elisa devoted her whole life serving the house of Thissy, she practically is part of the family. Even after all the explanation, the Duke remains silent, and Chloe starts to get a little worried. Besides, it's freezing cold, and the poor girl is only in pajamas and a cloak. It's impossible to know what is going through the Duke's mind as he doesn't say anything. Then the protagonist tries to elaborate a bit more on the explanation, saying that she called the doctor without asking for his permission because she didn't want to disturb his sleep, and she apologizes. Finally, the handsome man speaks, calling her, saying that he never asked her to explain anything, and that there is no need for her to explain her actions or apologize. The only thing he wanted to understand is why she tried to help Elisa, and he also learned that even the protagonist wrote a letter of recommendation for Elisa to get another job. Chloe explains that she seemed to need help, and since she worked her whole life in the castle, she wouldn't be able to get a letter of recommendation any other way. And regarding the doctor, the situation was urgent, so there wasn't much time to waste. The Duke asks if perhaps the desire to help came more from wanting to alleviate the guilt of having made Elisa be sent away. to which Chloe denies. And the Duke asks if it was out of pity, because her son stole all the money, or if it is because she has always had a sometimes even exaggerated compassion for her employees. Again denying, the protagonist questions him if he has a reason for all his actions, to which proudly he replies that yes, and Chloe doesn't understand why he has to ask so many questions. The Duke then asks what she would do differently instead of asking questions when she wants to get closer to someone. Embarrassed, since she didn't know that was his intention, she replies that she just ends up getting to know people naturally. Especially when you observe the person from afar. You end up knowing that person better, without needing to conduct an interrogation. Looking at Chloe's red hands, Damian says she seems to be cold. Then he puts his cloak on her shoulders, while saying that he would like to give her another gift. The Duke is considering hiring Gillis for the now vacant position of stable master, since Gillis is working every day making deliveries at the train station instead of returning to the state of Verger. So it would be more or less like a welcome suggestion. Clearly, this makes her very happy, affirming that Gillis is a very reliable man and that she would bet he would do everything right with his life. Besides swearing that nothing inappropriate happened between the two, leaning towards the protagonist, the Duke says that if that is the case, she should kiss him, asking her to prove that her relationship with that servant is as pure as snow, and thus the Duke will fulfill what he just said. Chloe says she has no desire to kiss the Duke. What he comments is that it is a shame, apparently, that poor boy will find himself on a train outside the duchy. The protagonist even tries to argue, saying that Gilles is free to choose where he wants to stay. Damian says that he is a very devoted husband, and the less trust his wife places in him means that the fewer places will accept Gilles. This clearly leaves Chloe irritated as he is trying to screw the boy over some silly jealousy, seeing that there was no way out. She asks him to lower his head, and clearly he does. Suddenly, she pulls at his clothes and gives him a kiss. We know she wanted it already, right? And keeps playing hard to get, but we know the boy is handsome. There's no way. Just kiss him already. It's obvious that he likes it. He pulls her into a hug, telling her not to try to escape, and then kisses her again, struggling to stay on tiptoe because of her leg. She ends up pulling back from the kiss, and Damian comments that it was a commendable effort after all. It was the most passionate kiss she gave him, and it was precisely for the sake of another person, which leaves him extremely satisfied and offended at the same time. Sometime later, Chloe is in the office writing a letter to her father, first apologizing for not having written earlier, as she has been quite busy, mentioning that it is so cold in the region that it even freezes the river. Even so, she hasn't had time to notice the change in weather, and the castle staff has been very polite to her. In addition to the Duke doing his best to help her adapt to her new life there, analyzing the letter, the protagonist realizes that it is not easy to write lies to her father. Continuing, she says that there is one more thing that will probably surprise him. Since her father mentioned in his last letter that he was upset about Gilles, he suddenly decided to leave his position at the Verdier house. It may have been because he was enchanted by the Duchy of Tissé after his short visit. The Duke offered Gilles a very good position in the castle, which she dares to say was out of consideration for her. As her father can see, she is being treated in the best way and with respect, so he doesn't need to worry. At the end of the letter, she wishes him good health, and that she misses him very much, signing as Chloe Verdier, daughter of Thomas Verdier, instead of using the Duke's name, just to irritate him a little more. Upon entering a room, she hears some billiard balls hitting the table. The Duke comments on how brilliant the game has been for him today, bragging about scoring over 100 points. Chloe says that he is cheating and that he actually just lost a point. Damian comments that she said before that she didn't know the rules, and that if she lied just to avoid playing with him, then that disappoints him. Ignoring the comment, she simply asks why he called her in the middle of the night. If the intention was to confirm if she is fulfilling her role as Duchess, he will soon find out that there are no problems at all, and her relationship with the castle staff has also improved a lot. The Duke hands the cue to Chloe, and she questions if he wants to compete with her. He agrees, but it's obvious that she knows there's something behind it, and asks what the conditions of the game would be. The protagonist explains that she doesn't play games that have nothing in return. Impressed with this side of Chloe that he didn't know, the Duke asks what she would like. Chloe then says that if she wins, he must stop calling her to his room in the middle of the night. The moment he asks what if he wins, Chloe becomes embarrassed, which he realizes she may not have even considered that possibility. Confident, the Duke says that if he wins, he will take something that belongs to her. Chloe accepts, determined not to lose this game. While they play, the Duke keeps teasing Chloe, saying that what she did was a foul, and it seems he has returned to his mode of teasing the girl he likes. Watching her play, Damian knew she was an impressive woman, but again she exceeded his expectations. Approaching Chloe as she is about to play, the Duke asks if she knows that the essence of this game is to deceive the opponent into making a mistake. He comments that in 2 days, a group of much-anticipated visitors will arrive at the castle, so he hopes she does her best as Duchess to welcome them. Additionally, the Marchioness Isabella will also be present. Provoking even more, the Duke says she is a peculiar woman. Then he suggests that Chloe take extra care in her preparations. At that moment, she plays and clearly ends up making a mistake. And Damian Felizino says that apparently she lost. She fell like a duckling into his strategy and ended up getting distracted by the fact that he commented on the Marchioness Isabella. The protagonist still tries to understand what this guy is thinking by bringing his own mistress to his house. Still excited about the victory, the Duke says it's time for Chloe to give him what he wants. Obviously, she asks what that would be. Holding her hair, Damian says that what he desires are her lips. And Chloe even doubts the sincerity of this request, but he asserts that he has never been more certain in his life. While waiting for her response, Damian only thinks about how much he wants to see Chloe unleash all those feelings she has been repressing, as if she were about to explode. Finally, the protagonist looks at him. Approaching, she comments that she has never felt so much contempt for someone before. The Duke simply replies that this is an honor, and she kisses him. As soon as she pulls away, he questions if that is all she would like to say. When Chloe responds that she has more, the Duke says he is all ears. Eagerly waiting for the moment she will show her feelings, Damian only thinks that this is her time to yell at him and ask why he insults her this way, wanting to see her release all those feelings. But our protagonist is controlled, and she just takes a deep breath and says that if he has nothing more to say, can she leave? It's clear from her look that the girl is feeling a bit sad. As soon as she leaves the room, seeing that her reaction was not what he expected, Damian realizes that he underestimated her, noticing that she makes him madder than he imagined. A few days later, all the invited women are at an afternoon tea with Chloe, while she thanks them for making a long journey to be there. Of course, there's a lot of gossip happening about the situation, and Chloe, speaking directly to Isabella, welcomes her. The woman thanks her, saying she was worried that her presence would upset the Duchess. But her composure is on point, and Chloe says that since Isabella is a great friend of her husband, there's no reason for her to be upset. Playing the victim, Isabella says it was not her wish to go through a situation that made her feel so miserable, and the other women try to comfort her. While shedding her crocodile tears, Isabella comments that she didn't know the world could be such a cruel place. Taking a deep breath, Chloe can only think about how ridiculous Isabella is for talking about feeling miserable. After all, who is more miserable there than a wife having to show hospitality to her husband's supposed mistress? Obviously, she cannot say that. So she just says that if Isabella is not feeling well, the Duchess will prepare a room immediately for her to be comfortable, asking if she would like to return to the castle. Through the reflection of the tea, you can already see the falseness displayed. Stepping onto the stage of her show, Isabella starts to cry, saying she knew her presence upset the Duchess, and that she was not a welcome figure in that place. Chloe even tries to counter. But it's too late, as all the other women present are already gossiping, and the most talked about subject comes up, asking what is happening. They all try to change the subject from the awkward situation, and Chloe says that the Marchioness was feeling unwell, so the protagonist suggested that she return to the castle. Looking at Damian, Isabella says she should never have come there, and that her only fault was going when she knew how people treat widows and divorcees in this country. The other noblewomen try to comfort her, saying that no one would think that way, and that it is not Isabella's fault that her husband passed away. Trying to turn the tables and worsen the Duchess's situation, the noblewomen comment that an afternoon tea in the middle of winter outside was practically very difficult for anyone to handle. Perhaps even they themselves were not feeling well anymore. One even comments that her tea has already gone cold in this cold. Chloe realizes that the two are completely hostile towards her. Perhaps it's because they cannot accept that a daughter from a debt-ridden family, and even more so with a disability, has become the Duchess. Damian comments that he will call a carriage for Isabella. As soon as Isabella begins to respond that she wouldn't want to ruin the situation because of her presence and is going to accept the Duke's invitation. Chloe raises her voice, apologizing if she made Isabella feel bad, but she would never have extended the invitation if she didn't want the presence of the Marquis. If she were feeling better, the protagonist says she would be very grateful for her presence. But if she is still feeling unwell, she has every freedom to go rest, extending her words to the other guests as well. Chloe then asks what Isabella would like to do, and realizing her defeat, she simply replies that she is feeling better and apologizes for the confusion. As she leaves, she comments that she thanks everyone for their understanding and that dessert will soon be served, which will be pudding. But before she exits, our dear one cannot stay quiet and says that this is Isabella's favorite dessert, complimenting how thoughtful it is of his wife. Irritated by the situation, Chloe simply says it was a pleasure as she leaves. As soon as the protagonist walks away, Isabella finishes her show thinking about how unexpected this was, and that it is not easy to deceive the Duchess. The nobles continue commenting that it was the Marchioness who met the Duke first. Therefore, she has the right to feel that what was supposed to be hers was stolen. Besides, it is absurd that they decided to put them ice skating in this cold. But since they will leave tomorrow, they must endure a little longer for the sake of their husband's influence. Hearing the gossip, Isabella gets irritated by the part that what is hers was stolen, while the couple enjoys their moment together on the ice. The villain devises a plan to get back what is hers. It seems that the nobles who were complaining are now having fun on the ice. The Duke comments on the excellent weather today, and Chloe agrees that everything is going well thanks to the Duke. In addition to praising him for knowing that the protagonist would not be easily defeated, but she once again exceeded his expectations. Irritated, she questions whether he finds the situation amusing. Her situation was not easy at all, as if she let the other nobles disrespect her. She would completely lose her authority as Duchess. If that happened, it was obvious that the impact would be very negative for the Thissy family, which is why she did not let it happen. Simply fulfilling her role as Duchess, as he likes to emphasize at every opportunity. Damian, calling her wife, asks if she resents him. Chloe replies that if that were true, she wouldn't be foolish enough to admit it out loud, which leaves the Duke surprised, not understanding the reason. The protagonist explains that it is because he holds her life in his hands. She wouldn't want to be stranded in the middle of a frozen lake for having offended him. Laughing at the response, Damian says there is no one who amuses him more than her. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she simply does not respond to his remark. A nobleman calls the Duke, who states that he wouldn't want to leave his wife alone for too long, so he will be brief. He apologizes if his wife offended the Duke in any way, while Damian keeps an eye on whether Chloe is okay. The situation irritates the Duke, as the guy separated him from the Duchess just for this. At that moment, as he took his eyes off Chloe, the other nobles begin to pass around. Damian, seeing her so immersed in her thoughts, wonders what she could be thinking, and if he could know what goes on in her head, would this desperate thirst pass? Wishing he could see how the world looks through her eyes and analyze every little piece of how her mind works, to be the only presence in the world that she sees with her eyes. At that moment, he questions whether these feelings are because he wants that woman to love him, what he himself believes is absurd, since he has never felt this way before. It seems someone is getting a little smitten, not wanting to waste any more time with that guy. The Duke approaches, saying if forgiveness is what he desires, then he should ask his wife to apologize directly to the Duchess, since he just wasted his time when he should be with his wife. In that brief moment, he took his eyes off the protagonist, a loud noise is heard, and someone shouts that the Duchess is in trouble. Chloe is on the ground trying not to be dragged by the hole in the frozen lake that opened. However, more of the ice gives way, and she ends up falling into the freezing lake. As she sinks, Chloe cannot understand exactly how this happened, but she wonders if this is how her death arrives, wishing as her last desire to see her family again. The Viscount, Alice and Gilles. For a moment, even Damian appears in her mind, losing consciousness while someone saves her. The Duke quickly places her on the ground to make her breathe again, feeling relieved to see that she is okay, but irritated to know who was responsible for such an affront against his wife. Sometime later, already recovered in her room, the doctor informs that she will need to rest for a while, as she was extremely lucky that the Duke rescued her without delay. If by any chance he had taken a little longer to rescue her, she would probably have suffered irreparable damage. The maid says she is very happy that the young lady is well, while Chloe could only think about the event before the tragedy. After all, that chair couldn't have tipped over by itself, so someone probably pushed it on purpose. And it wasn't that hard to imagine who it could be. The protagonist asks the maid if all the guests have left, except for Marquise Isabella. The girl agrees, saying that the Marquise fainted when she saw the Duchess's condition. She questions where the Marquise might be now, which the girl hesitates to reveal. But Chloe says she just wants to talk to her. Nothing serious. In another room, Isabella says she finally managed to get some time with the Duke, who, clearly uninterested, says that since he granted her some time, she should speak quickly. Isabella says that, as expected, Johannes's illness is getting more serious. Apparently, the king has realized that a rebellion is becoming imminent. Moreover, the king threatened to kill Isabella if she does not bring the Duke to the capital. Her plan is for him to hide in a village in Winsbury while she would lie to the king, saying that the Duke simply disappeared on the way to the capital. Getting closer, she asserts that she will help him. Stroking his arm, Isabella says he has nothing to worry about since she is by his side. The Duke places his hand on her face, asking if she really thinks he will go to Winsbury just because she asked. The woman tries to explain that if he doesn't go, he will be in danger. But Damian merely comments that Isabella's skin is very cold, just like it gets when she lies. He also says that there are probably a bunch of assassins waiting for him in Winsbury. He would have to be crazy to walk into a trap. Isabella says she doesn't understand what he means, but the Duke tells her to stop pretending ignorance, as it is becoming ugly to see her act foolishly, affirming that he knows very well that she betrayed him and chose to side with the king, that from now on there will be no more negotiations between them. Because of this, she has nothing more to do, because if she fails to take him to Winsbury, the king will probably kill her, warning that this is all her fault. Isabella gets nervous, saying that if he hadn't pushed her aside and married, this would have never happened. Damian asserts that this is strange. How could he have pushed her aside if he never once thought of her as his? Which makes it absurd to call this abandonment. The only role of the Marquise was to be part of his plan to pretend to be his mistress while he investigated some royal family connections. And this would have been impossible if Isabella hadn't been one of the former queen's companions. Moreover, the Duke says he has already paid enough for her work. Questioning if she really believes there was something more in their relationship, desperate, Isabella kneels, pulling the Duke's leg, saying that if she returns to the king, she will surely die, begging him to forgive her and help her. However, the Duke is certain that he will not negotiate, and warns Isabella that she is very naive to think he would reconsider after she tried to assassinate his wife. With this statement, Isabella steps back, saying it wasn't her, that she wasn't even near the Duchess when it happened. But Damian is sure it was her and warns her not to provoke his fury with these ridiculous lies. Not knowing what to respond, Isabella tries her last card, embracing the Duke, saying that she loves him, for him to do whatever it takes to save her, pleading for help. Claiming that everything she did was because she loved him, the Duke pretends to comfort her, saying that it is too late for that and that she should just disappear from his sight. And of course, poor Chloe arrives just at that moment, hearing Isabella's desperation, saying that she loves the Duke and asking him to help her. Hearing this, Chloe tells the maid that they should return to the quarters, and Damian, listening to this from inside the room, opens the door quickly, calling Chloe, happy to see that she is already recovered, but questioning why she is not resting, clearly upset, but still doing her best not to show it. The protagonist says she wished to see the Marquise and apologize for causing a commotion. Damian says that Isabella is not in a condition to see anyone at the moment. But before he continues the sentence, Chloe interrupts, saying that since he was also there, she needed to say something. Then she asks him to let her return to the state of Verdier. And that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. I actually don't know if I root for Damian. Don't root for Damian, I like him, but sometimes he does things that make me wonder if it's right. So, it's a slightly different romance. It has a bit more of an adult vibe. It has some pretty toxic and concerning traits, but at the same time, it's beautiful, the drawing is well done. So I'm divided, but I just want him to fall in love with her and end up being punished for everything she went through, even though sometimes I think he has good intentions, even if she doesn't believe that. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you liked this series. I did it a little differently this time, so I have 2 more videos from this series in production, which I will release little by little to see if you enjoy this new format, because I know you like continuations. This is a series that is complete. Its name is Betrayal of Dignity, and in this video, I made it up to chapter 26. So if you really enjoy it, share, comment, and if there is a lot of feedback, I will post the other parts as soon as I see that you are interacting a lot. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos of this series, and if you like this format and give a lot of feedback, I promise to create more formats like this. Kisses, and see you next time.